just before this video starts, I feel like we need to sort of mention it. Last weekend, Ricky Hatton did pass away. It feels wrong to sort of make a boxing video at this time without mentioning it. He was obviously a legend of the sport, and particularly in the city of Manchester. And yeah, I just feel like we need to bring it up and you know, show some respect for such a legend of the game. But also, a lot of the issues he faced in his life will affect a lot of people. I'm sure maybe some people watching this video, so I think it's just kind of important to raise awareness for those issues and make sure that people get the help that they need for those. So I'll leave some links in the description if anyone watching this video needs or feels like they need to look at them. I do just want to say a big thank you to the support shown recently on the Dustin Poirier video that I made a couple weeks ago. That was such a fun video to make. I've got another one planned. I'm not going to say who. I will say it's not a fighter this time, but it's one of my favourite athletes and sportsmen of all time. Make sure you do like and subscribe to see that when it comes out. And if you haven't seen the Dustin Poirier video, please feel free to check it out. It's got a lot of support and I really do appreciate all that. So last weekend we did see Terrance Crawford and Canelo Alvarez fight in the ring. It was an incredible fight. Waking up at 5 AM in the morning for it, but was well worth it. In the fight, we saw Terrance Crawford completely dismantle Canelo Alvarez, and it's got a lot of people asking, is he the greatest of this generation, and where does he rank in the overall greatest of all time list? So let's go through the fight first, and then I want to give my thoughts on where he ranks in this sort of current era of boxing. Going into this fight, it did seem quite a 50-50 fight. He was actually the underdog, I believe, when it came to the betting, and a lot of people had picked Canelo Alvarez to win this fight. So it was a surprisingly comfortable win, and I don't mean that in terms of it was easy for Terrance Crawford, not by any stretch of the imagination was it easy, but it was a very clear win. It was clear to score, very obvious the rounds he won. Sometimes it's like rounds could go either way, decisions can even go either way, but a unanimous decision, a fairly convincing unanimous decision. It was a masterful boxing performance, and he becomes the first, I believe the first male fighter to be undisputed in 3 different weight classes, at least in the 4-belt era. I think someone might have done it before when there was less belts, but regardless, it's a historic achievement and a historic fight. When you were watching the fight, each time that Canelo seemed to have a strong round, the round straight afterwards would be one of Terrance Crawford's best rounds in the fight, and he spoke after the fight about needing to take that momentum away from Canelo Alvarez, and he definitely seemed to do that almost perfectly. Crawford's obviously got an amazing judge of distance as well as his hand placements. You can see a lot of the time some big shots fired by Canelo Alvarez, they would, even if they would just glance over his gloves, that's taken a lot of the power and a lot of the sting out of those shots, which means that when they do land on him, they're not as impactful as they would be if they landed flush. And also, a lot of the time, they'd maybe be landing when he's on the way out, or maybe they would just miss him. And that's, again, just his incredible judgment of distance and timing. This also allowed him to kind of ghost in and out of the pocket and land those big combination shots that ultimately won him the fight and that looked devastating at times in that fight. And we've all seen, you know, that shot in the 12th round that spun Canelo 180 degrees around. It looked like a shot out of like a Creed film or something like that, especially when you see the picture. I'll put it up on screen now, the picture of Canelo after it's been hit. It looked staged. It was amazing. It was perfect timing, and you know, credit to Canelo for taking that shot so well. We obviously know Canelo's got one of the best chins in the history of boxing, and he didn't really seem particularly fazed by that. He did a little shake of the head, which is kind of a sign, you know, if you have to play up that the shot didn't affect you, it probably did affect you at least a little bit. So obviously Crawford fights in a southpaw stance a lot of the time. He does like to switch, but primarily he's a southpaw fighter. And throughout this fight, you can watch in all of these exchanges, he has his lead foot, which is his right foot, outside of Canelo's, which is the left. Now this is just textbook when you're fighting an opposite stance opponent. Whether you're orthodox or southpaw, if you're fighting someone who's the opposite stance, you want that foot on the outside of them, and that just leaves them a lot more open. You've got a better angle to land those shots, and throughout this fight you can see Crawford doing that constantly, which allowed him to, like I said, land those big combinations that were winning him those rounds and winning him the fight. Most of Alvarez's success in this fight came through these sort of single shot, big overhands, big body shots, whereas Crawford was landing, 3, 4, 5, potentially even 6 punch combinations in the pocket. A lot of time he was moving on the back foot and getting those, counter shots. But a lot of it was inside boxing, landing combinations. When they got in close, you can really see how Crawford has mastered his defense, especially from that southpaw stance. He would always leave his lead hand out, pretty much touching Canelo's, which completely neutralizes that hand from Canelo, and it will also block his vision, so he's getting a worse view of it. Sometimes you would see his entire lead forearm would be across Canelo's guard, which makes it harder for him, obviously, to throw shots, especially to the head. And then you'd see his backhand, which for Crawford is his left hand, would be so tight into his body, his elbow tucked and his glove right on his chin. And this, again, makes it so hard for Canelo to land cleanly, because if he goes for a body shot, he can just drop that hand and block it with his forearm or his elbow. And if he goes for a headshot, he can bring the glove right up and block it there. So that meant that in the pocket, Crawford was the only one who was landing consistently and meaningful shots. Obviously, Alvarez did have his moments, did win some rounds, but for the vast majority of the fight, especially on the inside, it was all Terrance Crawford. After the fight, a reporter did ask Canelo how Crawford compared to fighting Floyd Mayweather, and Canelo quite plainly said, Crawford is better than Floyd Mayweather. And this, along with all the achievements that Crawford has had in his career, has led a lot of people to sort of suggest and debate whether he's the greatest of this generation and where he ranks on that greatest of all time list. In my opinion, for the greatest of this generation, his biggest competition is the current heavyweight king and former cruiserweight undisputed champion, Alexander Usyk. So let's compare these two, and I'm going to give my thoughts on who I think is the best of this generation. Now, both of them on pretty much all governing bodies, pound for pound lists, are number 1 and 2. Ring Magazine has Terrance Crawford number 1 and Usyk 2. BoxRec has them switched. They're clearly in that conversation together, and they clearly are very, very close, and a lot of it will just come down to opinion. But let's just compare their careers and their achievements. Both fighters have become undisputed in multiple weight classes. Terrance Crawford has done it in 3, whereas Usyk has done it in 2. And both of them hold undefeated records, and both have never even been knocked down in a fight. Terrance Crawford obviously has the superior number of fights and knockout record. Now, if you're looking at Usyk, who's kind of more recently come into the spotlight since moving up to heavyweight, and you look at some of the titans that he's fought at that, you've got Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois all beating them twice over. And then obviously he's got some amazing competition like Tony Bellew down at cruiserweight. You then move over to Terrance Crawford, who's obviously just added Canelo Alvarez. He's got Errol Spence Jr., Sean Porter, Kell Brooks, Amir Khan. And before he fought Madrimov, where he won by unanimous decision, obviously won this one by unanimous decision, he was on a 9-fight KO streak. So just for that little bit of context, there is no doubt that these two are the top 2. A lot of people might throw Inoue into the mix, but in my opinion, it's these two that are number 1, and that's probably just because they're the two that I've seen the most of. Now, for me personally, I do slightly lean more towards Alexander Usyk. It is a very close competition. They're both incredibly dominant champions with stacked records of achievements and opponents and competition. But there is one thing that, in my opinion, gives Usyk that little edge over Terrance Crawford. Aside from the Canelo fight, where a lot was made of the size, Terrance Crawford's biggest and best fights, the size has been close, especially comparative to Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk at heavyweight is 6'3" and around 220 pounds. His heaviest was his most recent fight, where he weighed in at 227, but typically it's, sort of 222, 223, 224. So let's call it 225, just for argument's sake. If you look at his biggest wins, especially at heavyweight, where he's gained most of his traction and a lot of his respect, Daniel Dubois is 6'5" and weighs in at 243 both times he fought. Anthony Joshua is 6'6" and weighed in at 240 the first time and 245 the second time. So that's a 20-pound difference already, or 15 on the lower weights. Tyson Fury, who both fights have been fight of the year contenders, some of the greatest fights ever. Tyson Fury is 6'9". The first time he weighed in at 260 pounds, and the second time, when Usyk was, I think, 223, was 280 pounds. That's a damn near 40 pound difference. Pound for pound essentially means if weight was even and a lot of these physical attributes were even, who is the better boxer? Who has the best skill? And Alexander Usyk has proved 6 times at the top level of boxing, with the most pressure, the most eyes, and the most acclaim, the most coveted prize, the undisputed heavyweight title of the world, has proved that a weight advantage against him does not matter. He will perform, he will win. And that's why, for me, Alexander Usyk is the greatest of this era and just edges Terrance Crawford out on that greatest of all time list. I'm not saying either of them are the greatest of all time, I just mean in the ranking, I think they're right next to each other, wherever you want to put them. But for me, Alexander Usyk is that one step ahead. And now that's not to discredit Terrance Crawford, who's an incredible fighter, obviously the superior knockout artist, and you can argue looks more dominant in his fights. Alexander Usyk, for as much as a lot of us will disagree with them, has had a couple of split decision wins against Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, but I think most people with a brain know that watching that fight, he won both of them quite comfortably. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree with me, or do you think Terrance Crawford is the greatest of this generation? Do you think he's the greatest of all time? Where does he rank, in your opinion, on that list? Thank you very much for watching this video, and again, check the links in the description for what I said at the start of this video.